We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy Show. It is Wednesday, Humpback Day. Good to have you with us. We want to know where you are dialing in from, what part of the country, what part of the world, because we want to rep you. We want to acknowledge you. This is the place where people all over the world hang out to engage in conversation. We talk about love, we talk about relationships, we talk about whatever it is that you need to help you get to a better place in your relationship. Where are you today? Not just physically, geographically, but where are you mentally and emotionally? What is the state that you are currently in? How are you feeling about your life, about your relationship? Let's have that conversation. We've been talking about intimacy anorexia. We've been talking about, what are the signs of it? What are the root causes of it? And today we're going to talk about how to overcome it. Listen, guys, but before we get started, as you know, we're always excited to tell you about the things that we do that really give people the greatest impact. It's the Last Chance Weekend. So we have another one coming up in the month of May. I believe it's the 13th through the 15th, the second weekend in May. You can get started registering. Check this out, and we'll then get into today's conversation. Be right back. That's right. That's the Last Chance Weekend. That, for most people, is your first step in your healing process. That is the recovery piece that is so necessary for you to go through to get to a better place, right? That's the road to recovery. And if you've been drenched and soaked and saturated in pain, this is the place that you want to be in order to get things right. I'm going to jump into a comment. D-Day was early November. We found Couples Academy in early December and realized that a loss of all intimacy caused the door to open. And we have been working on that place, but now husband can't seem to speak from his heart, but instead speaks to the right things to say, or am I missing something? Or should I say this, etc.? How do we get over the hurdle and get to normalcy? But that's what we're going to be talking about today, how to actually solve the problem. But what I want to do, since this is part 3, maybe you're joining us for the first time, just want to give you a quick snapshot of what it is we're talking about by giving you a foundational understanding of what intimacy anorexia is. So, by definition, intimacy anorexia is a relational dynamic where one or both partners actively withhold emotional, intellectual, spiritual, and sexual intimacy from their partner. So, emotional anorexia means that you are living in an emotionally and psychological starvation mode. Now, think about this visible image. This is an image of an individual who is not healthy. She is living in starvation mode. She's depleted. She doesn't have her proper nutrients. She's a bag of bones. And oftentimes in our relationship, it could feel exactly the same way. We've talked about these symptoms, and many of you can relate to these particular symptoms, but how do you get beyond it? You can't just snap your finger and hope that it all goes away. You can't rub your nose like a genie and just things magically appear. You can't pray without works. Faith without works is dead. Prayer is an important part, but there's certain things that both of you have to come into agreement with that prayer and actually do. And we want to talk about the doing, right? And so at the end of the day, it just seems as though there are times when one person's more motivated than the other. One's willing to put more of the work in than the other. We say this all the time. You have certain couples, couple number one, they both want it, so they're both willing to do what's necessary. Couple number two, one wants it, just one's unsure. They're just in that I don't know space. Couple number three, one wants it, one does not. So depending upon where you are, it will determine exactly how you go about approaching this, but we do want to give some guidelines that are going to be helpful for you in your journey. I think what we're talking about is a couple who they are not connecting, they are not effectively communicating, they are not sharing their true feelings. And I think to that point, I'm saying the appropriate thing, right? I may do the appropriate thing, but there's a wall up. And so I don't feel comfortable being safe, being vulnerable, opening up my mind and sharing my thoughts, opening up my heart and sharing my feelings. Every time we attempt to have this conversation, it just doesn't go well. There's such a hypersensitivity. Now we all caught up in our feelings and things turn into an argument. So I just rather avoid it because I just want peace. So how do you begin to broach the subject? How do you begin to unpack things to get to a solution? Well, number one, there's no other way around it, but you have to share your feelings. But how? How do I share my feelings? How do I encourage my spouse to share his or her feelings? Well, it's less of when you did, you made me feel, or when you do, this is how I feel, because now it becomes accusatory, now it becomes finger pointing, and now the defenses go up, right? And so we've had this conversation 1,001 times. I'm not having it again. I'm just tired. You already know the end result of the conversation. So what's the point in even engaging? So here's a tool that can help, okay? This is something that you could probably find on the internet, but it's a powerful tool. It's actually a it's a feeling chart. It's an emotion chart. And in it, it shares emotions. So, typically people think happy, anger, caring, depression, and fear, but there's a number of different words that are synonyms of those major types of emotions. And so one idea could be, hey, why don't you find a word that best resonates with how you're feeling? And then you can unpack that word, right? So for instance, in the fear zone, I feel afraid. That's a good word. Yes, I feel afraid. Well, why do you feel afraid? I feel afraid, like I just have this fear that if I truly open up, it's going to backfire on me. Or I feel afraid that it's just going to happen again. And so identifying a word and kind of sharing how one feels takes the blame off of the other, takes ownership of that feeling, whether that feeling is based upon an internal issue that I'm struggling with, or if it's based upon an external reality. And so these are things that can be helpful. Let's go to another one. Under depression, right? If I scroll down here, one word, number 10, I feel dejected. Man, I was trying to figure out a word that could really articulate how I feel, and that's what it is. I just feel dejected. And so having this as a tool that you can incorporate into your conversation could at least begin to start peeling back the layers. And so what we want to do is not be offended, not take the defense, but be open to learn. See, when you're teachable and coachable and realize that it is your responsibility to become a student of your spouse, you can know where he or she is, and then after hearing it, then you could maybe talk through how those feelings can be addressed, how those emotions can be addressed, what the root causes of those emotions are. Where did it start? When did it start? What were the circumstances that were happening when there was this shift and all of a sudden you found yourself in this place? How long have you been feeling this way? How have you been processing it? These are the types of conversations you want to have, and it's less you versus me, him versus her. It's, okay, how do we process this thing together? So that is an excellent tool just to get the conversation going, right? Sharing your feelings is critically important. And I'm going to give you some other things that are also going to help. So that helps with the emotional anorexia, because we just don't connect that way. We just don't talk. But the more we begin to do it, the easier it gets. And now there's a regularity, there's a consistency, there's an openness, there's a willingness, and we're starting to, change lanes, if you will. Here's another one. Dating your spouse on a weekly basis. This is not just for the couples who are in a good place. This is for the couples who are in a not so good, and dare I say, bad place. Because it is important to bring fun, excitement, thrill, newness, something different into your relationship. If you don't date and all you do is know your spouse in the context of these four walls, right? And then these four walls, I come out looking how I come out. There's a normalcy and a predictability. I only see you in one particular way. It creates this dynamic. It creates this, whatever type of feeling. But when you step out in a different environments can create different moods. Different environments can help foster a different chemistry. You go to work every single day dressing up, looking nice. Now we go on a date. You're dressing up, looking nice. I'm seeing you from a different perspective. It's not what you're doing when you leave here to experience with other people. Now I'm experiencing this with you, right? There's a lighter side. Because we're going out on a date, we're not having these heavy conversations. We're creating a new norm, a new chemistry. And one of the things that really is impacted most in relationships when they begin to go down this slippery slope is they lose the fun element, the excitement element, the dating element, the let me get to know you element, because they get caught up in these ruts and these routines. And as they say, monogamy oftentimes leads to monotony. So taking turns, I'll do it this week, you do it that week. We're starting to move forward in a direction where we're connecting in a different way. We're moving beyond partner into companion. And at the end of the day, listen, I just want to be friends with you again. I just feel like I lost my friend. I want my friend back. And I want to be able to talk to my friend and laugh with my friend and just enjoy time with my friend. And in order to gain that aspect of your relationship back, you got to get out of duty and obligation and responsibility, and you got to get back into fun. You got to increase your likability factor, because if I love you, that's one thing. But if I don't like you, like if I don't enjoy being around you and I got to like you again. So we've got to increase this likability factor to take this relationship to a better place. Guys, I hope this is helping. We have some more solutions, but you've heard some of these before in a different context, but I want you to think in the context of how do we go from starvation to feeling fulfilled, feeling full, feeling as if we have all the love that we truly desire. This is how we do it. Listen, guys, we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Check this out. Hey guys, we're back. You're watching the Couples Academy show. Good to have you all with us. To my brother Gonzalez, to Shalise, to Ralph, to Lindsay, to VTFLO, Lisa, Facebook user Torre, Jarius, Andrea, JD Pruitt, Fred. The list goes on and on. We're happy to have all of you here today. For all of you who are on Twitter, all of you who are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, thank you. Thank you for being a part of this community and making this thing go so well. Natural Beauties, Kimberly, Robinson, Dee Dee, you're all here. Shamari, glad you're here. And for all those who we aren't aware that you're here, we appreciate you watching. For all those that watch the replay, we appreciate you for watching. This Friday, we're going to make a big announcement that we're excited about. So stay tuned. Check in on Friday because we got a lot to share with you. But, you know, I think we have a couple comments I want to go to. Lindsay says, I appreciate how these series are complementing all that I've learned in Unearthed. Awesome. So that's right. You are in the Unearthed program, and we're so glad that you're getting something out of it. As a side note, there is a new Unearthed group starting April 20th, okay, along with Foundry. So for those of you who have been in the waiting room, waiting for the next group to start, it is just a week or so away. And if you're still considering and contemplating whether you should do it, well, you just got a perfect testimonial from someone who's currently in the program. They are getting a tremendous results out of the experience, and the same healing and transformation that they're getting, we want you to have that as well. So come on here and sign up so that you can get what you need to get. Then Shalise says, speak from his heart, but instead speaks to the right thing. Oh, I think I read that already. Let me go somewhere else. Fred says, sometimes she's better off saying nothing as much as you want to say something. In the end, it seems like it makes no difference. Well, here's the reality. That is a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Temporary solution, right? So it's best to say nothing because if I say something, it's just going to go south. But how long can you do that? Like at some point, you need to let it out. You need to release. Think about having to go to the bathroom, right? Whether it's number one or number two. How long can you hold it? Now, you can hold it, and then you could, and then the feeling go away, but eventually it comes back, right? Now, what if you could not be able to go to the bathroom and it's just being built up inside of you? Now you're carrying around all this waste and toxicity within you. Then it begins to make you physically sick because you haven't had the opportunity to release it. And so you have to release it. You have to get it out. You have to share it. But what we've discovered is that oftentimes it's not what you say, it's how you say what you say. It's the way that it's delivered. And we've talked about this often, how sometimes we deliver the right message in the wrong way, and it's not received well, and it's thrown back out, or it's completely rejected. And so that's when we give up hope. We throw in the towel. We call it quits. We say it can never get any better than this, because oftentimes our approach is wrong. We're sharing our feelings in the midst of our feelings. And so there's a better way. In our Foundry group, one of the men in the group, they're reading a book, and they're like, you know what, as I'm learning about this communication thing, I'm realizing I've been approaching my spouse the wrong way. And that's why I constantly get rejected. That's why things kind of bounce back. But in this particular story, I learned a technique about how to begin to approach her in a different way that may make her more receptive. And I think at the end of the day, it's all about how you preface things. It's all about how you deliver things. And if you're coming with an accusatory tone, of course, they're going to build up a defense. But there's a legitimate concern that you have that needs to come out. And if you feel as if no matter what you say, no matter what you do, it's not working, guys, that's exactly what Couples Academy is for, to work with you to help navigate conversations to get you to a better place. Shalise says, Jeff wasn't in the picture from this week, and I hope he will be there in June. His wisdom, like yours, is critical. Yes, Jeff is. Oh, okay. We're talking about the pictures that we took for the couples who were there at the Last Chance weekend. Yeah, Jeff and Lakeisha and Charmaine and Walter, and of course Danielle and I, we come together as a team to give couples an amazing experience. And we're happy about our ambassadors that are also a part of what we do. So we have Jewel and Gonzalez, which many of you know because they're part of The Daily Show. And they're phenomenal. They've been there from the very beginning, really giving inspiration and insight to the couples who really need things. And then we have other couples coming on board that we're really excited about, Roland and Janelle, excuse me. So there's more to come. You know, being a part of this team allows us to begin to pour into the lives of so many different people. But we're talking about this anorexia. Let's go to the next one. This is what you can begin to do, pursuing touch time. Now, let me explain what that means, because many people would say, listen, if you want to overcome like sexual and physical anorexia, just start having sex. But that is not that easy. That, for many people, cannot be the very next step. That is a step that we take. But first, we got to get used to touching. See, a lot of couples just don't touch. In fact, the only time they touch is when they're in the bed having sex. But you got to start there. You got to start with what's comfortable. Some couples, don't touch me, don't get up off me. I'm not ready for that. Do you know how many couples don't even look into each other's eyes to communicate? One's looking down this way, one's looking that way. They won't even make eye contact. So if they're in that space, sex is an impossibility. So we have to start with touch, getting comfortable with touch. Listen, do you mind if I hold your hand? Do you mind if I put my hand on your shoulders? Do you mind if we cuddle? Do you mind if we both sit on the same side of the couch and our legs kind of graze each other? Like, getting used to that and creating consistency in that, then that becomes normal. Then you can incrementally move forward and stretch a little bit more. Now we're going from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And before you know it, we are now in a place where we've created an environment that has opened up our hearts and opened up our minds to be able to engage in sexual intimacy again. But there's so many people who have an aversion. There's so many people who are struggling with the whole idea of having sex with their spouse because they are emotionally dead. And you have to understand, sex is more than just physical. It is emotional. It is spiritual. You're bringing all of who you are, your entire being, into that experience. And if I feel devoid, if I feel empty emotionally, I can't give my body to you if I feel neglected, rejected, abused, confused. Like, all these things are going on inside of me. And yes, it's sacrificial. And I've heard many people say, like, it feels like rape. I remember T.D. Jakes said that sexuality without intimacy feels like rape. And it's interesting for many people, the feeling and the touch that used to stimulate is now the touch that repels. So we have to start somewhere, and we need to start with pursuing time to touch. So we go from non-sexual touch, getting comfortable with that, then transitioning into sexual touch, and then transitioning into sexual intercourse or intimacy. That's the pathway to get exactly where you want to be. And when you begin to do that, all of a sudden things begin to change. Now, let's go to the next point, because I think this is really, 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 really huge, and this is where people struggle the most. Listen, you got to get out of your head. Get out of your head or you are dead. Now, I don't mean physically dead, but what I'm saying is, a lot of times we can't help but thinking about what happened. Whether it happened a month ago, a year ago, a decade ago, we are still trapped in negative memories of the past, which keeps us from opening up and becoming vulnerable. A lot of times we have imprisoned our spouse to their past. So in the past, he did. In the past, she said. In the past, they were. And we can't see them today for who they are or who they are becoming, because all we have done is fixated our minds on that past experience. And just as the offender has a role to play in becoming the best version of him or herself, you have a role to play as well. And that role is releasing these negative thoughts that have imprisoned you, that have bound you, that have tied you up, and have kept you trapped in this relational dynamic. It requires opening yourself up, being vulnerable, making a decision to see your spouse as someone or something different, because when you do that, all of a sudden things begin to change in your life. So you got to get out of your head, right? We talk about, not bringing intention into your space, but paying full attention while you are in your space with your partner. So even though that has happened, what's happening now? How am I showing up now? How am I communicating now? How am I treating you now? And so you've got to embrace now, right? Because the past no longer exists. So why do you continue to hold on to it? It just keeps you trapped in those feelings and emotions. You got to get out of your head. And sometimes that means being intentional to start your day with a ritual, right? Where you declare and you have affirmations and faith confessions and whatever you want to call it, that really begins to reshape or retrain your mind and your thinking to think and feel a particular way. When thoughts come, you got to catch, you got to release, you got to thought shift, and then respond with a positive thought to cancel out that negative thought. And this is what you've got to do by repetition, right? Because repetition is the mother of all learning. So the more you say something to yourself, the internal conversations you have with yourself, the more you begin to believe it, and it becomes cemented in your psyche. It becomes cemented in your consciousness. Now, all of a sudden, you're thinking differently, feeling differently, which allows you to show up differently in your relationship. And so this is what's necessary. You got to train this mind, because your greatest enemy is in a me. It's inside of here. This is where the battlefield of the mind is. This is where your trust issues lie. This is where your forgiveness lies, or your unforgiveness lies. This is where all of the trauma lies. This is the place where your habits lie, like right here. If you could fix what's happening in between these ears, if you can manage this daily, that's the key to the breakthrough. That's why the Bible says that be ye transformed by what? By the renewing of your mind. And so you've got to get to the place where you brainwash yourself, because your brain has to be washed of all of the negativity, of all of the doubt, of all of the fear, of all of the stuff that has consumed you, that has kept you from wanting to really open up to your spouse and have no more anorexia, but to be full. You ever eat a good meal that you just like, oh my God, I'm stuffed, I can't eat anything else? You are full. Well, you want to have that emotional, physical, intellectual, and spiritual full feeling in your relationship. That is the place that you want to be. But in order to get to this place, we got to focus on this place. This here and this here is the pathway to this here. Does that make sense? That's why we say that the key to your marital restoration is your personal transformation. And when you begin to do that, everything shifts and changes. And then the last piece is you got to take on responsibility and accountability. Because at the end of the day, what we have a tendency to do, no matter what side of the offense that we're on, we're pointing the finger, not realizing that there are three fingers pointing right back at us. We shift blame. We make everything everyone else's fault. We are the victim. They are the villain. And that becomes the narrative that we continue to tell ourselves again and again and again. And so in that process, we're waiting for somebody else to save us from ourselves. We're waiting for somebody else to lift us up and to make things right, not realizing that, listen, they have their role to play, but I have to do my daily work. I can't keep looking at my spouse with a microscope trying to figure out, well, what are you doing today? And how come you're not consistent? And you didn't do this. You said you were going to do that. You're not showing up right. All you're doing is looking outwardly, and you're ignoring what's going on in your own life. Truth be told, you're struggling. You're not doing the work. You're not consistent. You're not showing up on time. You're not doing the reading. You're not doing the meditating. You're not doing the praying. You're not doing the daily rituals that you were given to do to get you out of that stuck place. But you have a preoccupation of what's happening to your partner. So you have to take on some responsibility, and you need to have someone else other than your spouse hold you accountable. Because when you begin to have that, when you have a mentor, when you have a coach, when you have a counselor, when you have a system, when you have a support group, and you begin to lean into that, they will keep you in line and in step, allowing you to move forward in the right direction. And sometimes being a part of a community is good, because you begin to see, wow, they're doing so much better than us, or they're just a few paces better than, ahead of us, and they've used these tactics, these methods, these techniques, these tools, this process to get to a better place. Hey, babe, why don't we try what they did? If it worked for them, it could work for us. And that's the power of group. That's the power of community. When that happens, I'm telling you guys, all of a sudden things begin to change. And so I'm telling you that Emotional anorexia does not have to be a permanent place that you remain in. It does not have to be your permanent address. You decide, you choose today what type of relationship you want. When you think 5 years from today, 10 years from today, what's the marriage that you ultimately want? What's the relationship that you ultimately want to have? When you can have that, and you have a clear visual image of what that is, you begin to move in that direction because you become a magnet and you draw to you what you fixate this mind and this heart on. But if all you see is a bleak future, all you see is darkness, you can't see anything positive up ahead, then guess what? You're going to get more of what you currently have. So your greatest enemy is enemy. And if it's going to be, then it's up to me, which ultimately gets to the point that you are the solution that you've been waiting for. Stop looking outside yourself. You go outside yourself for support, but the answer that you've been looking for, the solution, is within you. Guys, I hope this is making sense. You don't have to be in this place today. And if you don't know how, and if you've tried everything and nothing works, reach out to us. Let us support you. If you're in the Moving Forward program, do what you know to do. We can't do the work for you, but we can certainly come alongside you and be a support system. If you're considering the Last Chance Weekend, consider it no more. Sign up. Get what you need. Let's be a part of your journey. Guys, we love you. We'll see you tomorrow for another episode. Take care.